Welcome to Everyday Moodlings. I'm your host, Jeree Parks, and in this challenge, this week's challenge, I'm going to challenge you to use some bits and pieces or leftover pieces parts. So let me explain. We will be working on my version of the June 2016 Tim Holtz tag, and here it is. And this is just a reminder for me. This is just a book of ideas I have for tags and ATC cards. So I just put that in there with a little washi tape. But one of the things I wanted to start out with, rather than creating two whole new tags, is some leftovers that I have. I often have these in my studio. Some of them are just playthings. Some of them are just from playtime. Some of them playthings, that sounds weird, doesn't it? Just from playtime. Some of them are where I was wiping off excess spray ink or regular ink or paint. Some of them have been cut out from the big book of backgrounds. These were obviously wipe-offs from a stencil, so I wanted to use one of them. I have quite a number of these in my studio. I wanted to use one of them for this week's project. So that is my challenge for you this week, is to use something in your craft area or your studio that's kind of a leftover from another project and kind of incorporate that into this week's project. So I'm going to be making a tag, like I said, a Tim Holtz tag. Now, I don't have really much of anything of what he used on here, so instead I'm using basically the overall design with the products I already have. Now I will be incorporating many of his products. Well, I shouldn't say many, but some of them. So actually the tag was originally created, this is a stamp used with spray ink. So that's what that is. I have a piece of watercolor paper that I'm actually going to use for my background. This will be my foreground. But I liked what he did. He was using plain tissue paper to do an overlay. I'm going to be using deli paper. I'm going to be using some antique Mod Podge. Now this does not get brown enough for me, so I'm going to add in just a little bit, or it's not aged enough, quite enough for me, so I'm going to add in a little bit of ink to it as well to kind of give it a little bit more aged look. I'm going to be using his flower dies to do my cutout for the overlay. And then I also have a sentiment already printed out for my flowers, which says, "Listen to many, speak to few," which I thought was great for flowers. And then a few other little bits and pieces that we're going to add on here. So we're going to start by first of all doing our overlay and adhering that to our ready to go ahead and apply our deli paper here. And I did mix the Mod Podge with actually Vintage Photo, just a single drop. And this is what I have. And so Tim Holtz has an aging medium now that he has out, and I don't have it in my stash, so this is what I'm going to use instead. Now I have enough here that I will probably keep this in a small container, particularly if I like it. So let's go ahead and adhere our deli paper. So now I'm just going to leave that dry, obviously, for a little bit. It does have some wrinkles in it, which I actually kind of like. I like the texture that that gives, so I'm going to go ahead and leave that. Now, I could have done it, I think, now, to be honest, this is the first time I've mixed these two things together. So I have a feeling that it's going to lighten up a bit as it dries. But it might be a little dark for my taste. But I think when we add in some of the other elements, that will lighten it up a little bit. So I'm going to clean up, and then we're going to work on making the background tag while this one is drying. Okay, remember how I said I was going to go ahead and keep it? I get these little plastic containers at like the dollar store, so you can get like a 8 or 10 pack for $1. And then I'll keep this in there for when I want to use it. I did add some more of the Mod Podge just to lighten it up a little bit. And then I can set that aside. Sometimes I label it. Usually I can tell what it is. So that's how you kind of mix it together. I do have a little contamination in here, but I'm not worried about that because this is called the antique one anyway. So if I grunge it up a little bit, that's fine with me. So now we need to go ahead and cut out the background. And I have this little template that I made, which is of a shipping tag. That just makes it easy for me. And it's easiest if I just use the cut lines that are already there. Now we'll cut that out, and that'll be the perfect size for my tag background. And seeing how it's in the back, I'm not going to be real cautious about my cut lines. It'll be covered up by the other tag piece. So the great thing about Mod Podge is it dries really, really fast. So we can go ahead and take off the extra. Deli paper or tissue paper is super fun to work with because it creates such nice layers. It doesn't quite obscure the layer underneath, which makes for a very fun dimensional look. Now as this dried, it did not lighten, so I'm glad I went ahead and added lightened it up a little bit in the container. Now you can see it's a little, I got a little bit of overage here, but when I glue them together, I'll go ahead and cut off any excess. But for right now, we're going to go ahead and do our die cutting. And like I said, I'm using the Tim Holtz flowers, and I wanted to go ahead and do 2 of them. So I'm going to tape this down with a little Post-it note tape, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut it out before I layer it on top of my other tag. Okay, so I've die cut my pieces. I was pretty sure my tag would fall apart, but that's fine. It's I'll reassemble it on the background. And as I laid it down on here, I felt like these colors were too light, too subtle behind it. There was too much this orange and yellow, which kind of matched my tag front. So I recut a new one that has just purple behind it. And that stands out much better. So I'll just have to kind of piece things back together here a little bit to finish up my tag. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up the assembly process, and I'll be back when we're all done. There we go. So my June tag is done. Sometimes it's really, this is one of those months where I feel like it's really hard to take somebody else's kind of design and turn it into something that works for me. Not sure that this would be what I would do if I was just, working on my own. But it's still, there are a lot of techniques I like in here. I like doing the overlay with the deli paper as well as the cutout with the die. Of course, anytime you can add stitching, well, that's awesome. So some good techniques in here. If you have any questions about anything I used or anything I did, please be sure to let me know. And we will be back next week with a brand new challenge. If you like what you see, be sure to like the video and follow us, because we put videos up on a pretty regular basis, almost weekly, to try new ideas, new techniques, new designs. If you're watching this on YouTube, there'll be a link to the blog. You'll be able to see some pictures and a supply list for this particular tag, as well as other inspiration. And you will also be able to see all of the other tags for 2016. Again, my name is Jury Parks with Everyday Moodlings, and if you have any questions, be sure to let me know. Until next week, I hope you spend this week doing something crafty.